one of the things that my colleagues are fed up of hearing from me ad nauseam is how Frodsham, for example, is not as wealthy as people might think that it is. And it troubles me when I look at the data set that you have so kindly provided us with, that the depth of data that you're taking doesn't identify quite intense, smaller pockets of deprivation. I appreciate the point you made about the Lech before, but in certain areas of Frodsham, and it's not just Frodsham, there's a lot of rural deprivation out there. And I do understand why, on your slides, you highlighted the main towns. But can you give me some reassurance that outside those 4 named towns, that your services are getting out into the communities for the poor in Norley, the poor in Weaverham, the poor in Frodsham and Helsby, for example, in terms of what's going on?
One of the things that we do, in order to identify the young people who need additional help, at the end of year 8 in school, we undertake with the school an assessment of need that identifies against each young person the challenges and barriers that they may face in the future. We have a very simplistic triangle of need, 3 levels, and target group 1, there's about 11-12% of people in that top band. And we identify those across the whole of the 10,000 youngsters that we will work with pan Cheshire. And those youngsters then get additional support, whatever school they go to. If they're not in school, they get additional support. If they're in a special school, they get additional support. So whilst we're focused on the towns with the significant areas of need, every school who has youngsters with additional need, Norman mentioned the resource allocation model, that school will get some additional resource over and above a universal service. So some schools may have significant amounts, some schools may just have the odd day of additional support, but every school has a resource allocated to it based upon the needs that is assessed between the school and the Connexions partnership.
I endured, I think is the right word, reading the contract between Cheshire County, as it was, and your good selves in relation to the Integrated Youth Service. And I'm glad, John, that you have made the comments that you did about the quality of what's in here. It is the most woolly, dreadful document I think I've ever read. It is a classic local authority document which fails to grasp anything. Absolutely, it's utterly dreadful. So can I ask both parties down the end of that table, are you committed to revising, not necessarily the legal part of it, but are you both committed to revising the specification and the schedule of scope of work?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to get into a proper commissioning relationship. And that can actually bring the point that was made earlier about attracting other funds. Actually, this part of the world is most irritating. They're never going to hit those buttons, and it's so unfair because there are pockets, and sometimes those pockets, if you added a couple of them together, would actually amount to a similar scale, a different type of problem, but a similar scale of problem that you get in lots of other places that attract huge, and I really do mean huge amounts of additional funding, which isn't, I have to say, always used in the best possible way. What I think you see in places that are less used to that is often better targeting. But we've got to get better at that relationship.
I'm joined this evening then by 2 colleagues who from Research and Intelligence, Beverly Wilson and Judy Parry, who are the senior managers within the Research and Intelligence team who lead and coordinate the consultation programme for the authority, and by Lawrence Ainsworth, who's the senior manager for policy across the authority. So as I say, we're here for us this evening, very briefly to run through the paper that we prepared for you, but I'm not intending to go through this in a great deal of detail because I think it's self-explanatory, and I'm keen really then to respond to questions that you've got or respond and take the discussions in any way that you'd like to.
Some of the colleagues in the room know full well that I had probably the longest scrutiny meeting ever at Vale Royal, looking at a failed consultation exercise, or an exercise that was in grave danger of failing. Many issues arose in relation to that, including, for example, not making the consultation sufficiently specific for the target audience and taking account of the needs and the difficulties or the lack of capability with modern technology of that particular target audience. And whilst I appreciate your strategic principles are still in draft form, I think it is something I would like to see in terms of some sort of needs assessment, ability assessment of the target gathering with a view to maximising the participation of everybody from every segment, however you want to look at the segmentation of the population, so that everybody feels their views are being invited and nobody's being felt that they're being left out. that was a planning consultation that was involved, and I was horrified that one of the planning officers turned around and said, but we've always consulted in this fashion, ignoring the fact that most people in the area I'm thinking about were not computer literate or capable or having computers to be able to respond. Now, could you also ensure that our colleagues in the planning department take the messages on board as well, that when they go out to consultation, which happens very frequently, that they too take into account that people have different needs and not everybody is going to be able to read notices pinned on notice boards, what have you. I'm concerned that one of the recommendations we made was that actually the presumption should be, when it was something of particular concern, individual letters should be written and posted through letterboxes, so there could be no question at all that people had actually been made aware that the consultation was out there. Because one of the big issues will be if you've got somebody who's insular and is not necessarily interested in what's happening in the local authority, the only way we're going to be able to get hold of them is to actually physically put something through the letterbox. And I was horrified that that particular authority was incapable of putting things through letterboxes in a radius of 250 metres around a consultation site. And again, that's something I want you to take on board. To reflect what my colleagues have said, we ought to have things in here to say that consultation process should be honest, open and transparent. We only go out to consult when it is a genuine consultation. I certainly will have 6 fits, and I'm sure my colleagues around the table will, if somebody goes out to consultation where the decisions have already been taken, because it will bring it into disrepute, as we've already heard. And I think if we're going to produce a strategy document, and don't forget we've got the word principled in our vision statements as a council, put in there by people like me, insistent that we act appropriately and be seen to act appropriately, we should commit only to consult when we genuinely are seeking opinion, and we will take it into account, and decisions have not already been taken in advance, or we've even given the appearance of it. I appreciate you've got it in local government speak in the report, but one of the clear things is, and we failed to do this in relation to the enforcement strategy consultation which went out in relation to that, is there anything else you wish to tell us needs to go on every single consultation exercise we do? And I appreciate many have gone out where that general indication isn't there, and if that, without it being on, we give the impression, erroneously or otherwise, that it's all a stitch-up. And none of us want to give that. We want to have a new, fresh relationship with our people, and we're only going to get that if we are seen to be honest, open and transparent and genuinely seeking interest. I'm wondering what the best way forward in relation to this is, members. I mean, I'm certainly very, very interested in it. Now, I appreciate not all of you may be interested at the same level that I am. This could be the sort of thing that we could have a task and finish group looking at to work with you, so that wherever else it's going, we actually could have a small panel of members sitting with you which you can bounce thoughts of before you put reports anywhere else, if that would be of help. Another alternative is to ask you to come back in 2-3 months' time and present another report where we can knock it around the table. But members, I'm in your hands. What would you like to see done in relation to this?
I think it all depends, Chair, what audience we're actually trying to consult with. I mean, councillors themselves have enough problem with acronyms. I mean, it's just like talking in a foreign language, and if you're trying to engage members of the public and you start talking about DSG and grants this and grants that, they haven't got a clue. And nor would you expect them to have a clue. And I think documents should be written with that, depending on the audience that you're seeking to engage. If it's councillors, okay, we can get by, although we don't like acronyms, or I certainly don't. Maybe on the first page, or you can put a glossary on each document. But when you engage with members of the public, you've got to be seen, they've got to know what you're talking about.